Many believe that when we die, we leave imprints or can become attached to the places we're emotionally connected to. But some believe we can do the same with objects just as easily. Is it possible to haunt an object, or are we just misunderstanding our experiences? These are the questions we ask at the Needful Things Antique Store in Granbury, Texas.
What's going on?
I tried to call his phone. I tried to call Dad's phone first, but I keep hearing something walking back and forth, and I thought it was one of y'all.
Where do you hear it walking back and forth?
In the back of the house, but the motion light hasn't come on, and I ain't walking out of this room. It sounded like it was coming down the hall.
Join us during our investigation of the shop that lives up to its namesake as we dig into the history of the location and the mysterious objects within its walls. Decide for yourself if the antiques at Needful Things come with a little something more.
My name is Sunny, and I have a store in Granbury, Texas called Needful Things. We sell antique and vintage type items. I have had an 18-year-old girl working for me, and she was in here painting, and she first told me about it. She said, I think there's something going on in the house, and I said, well, what? And I said, that's ridiculous. I don't believe in that. What's going on? And she said that she would be painting and she would hear something fall or the door open, and she would get up to go see. She was here by herself, and there was nothing there, and she had locked the door so nobody could come in. At first she kind of just blew it off, old house making noises. Then she would be painting, she would turn around and put her brush on the paint bucket, and then she'd do something, she'd come back and the brush was gone. But that happened quite a few times with the paint. She was really angry about the paintbrush, because then she had to go get another paintbrush.
Did that freak her out at all?
Well, she was trying to figure out, like, have I put it down somewhere else and I just don't remember what I've done? So when she told me, she was really creeped out, and she was standing by the bathroom, and my friend was in the back room, and there's a closet that enters, and you can get in it from the bathroom or the back room. My friend was messing around in the closet, so it caused the closet door in the bathroom to open. Well, Kaylee saw it and screamed. And I said, Kaylee, calm down. It's just, it's Jan back there. And so she calmed down. But she was that scared where she thought that door was opening and it was a presence opening it.
My name's Rachel Hall, and I work with Sunny Woodhall.
I haven't personally had any experiences, although I feel like I'm an empath and I can feel attachments to items, and particularly in places like this where there's so many various items and older items. I could see a lot of spirits being around here, particularly the ones with the old photos. I get like a vibe from those. Like, I mean, just imagine, especially like the old wedding dishes and sets. Though you know, back in those days, they marked a significant time in someone's life, and perhaps maybe the only dishes they ever had or used, and so those were special. And you can only imagine they might want to keep an eye on them, you know. So I could see that happening a lot. I don't get a negative vibe, you know. I just think it's more of a curiosity and a watchfulness, you know what I mean? So I'm interested to see what y'all's expertise comes up with.
A couple weeks ago, it was storming here. It was a Saturday, and it was really dark in here because of the lightning and whatnot. And I was meeting an employee here that didn't have a key yet, and she was running late. So we always enter through the back door, which is our office/kitchen. I parked, I went in, I left all the lights out because I wanted to teach her kind of the opening process because she worked at the other shop. So I left everything off except for the front where the checkout counter is. I went ahead and turned those two lights on, and she was running behind, so I decided to go ahead and start opening the register. Still hadn't turned any of the lights on. As I was opening the register, I heard a door open. And that door makes a lot of noise when you open it. You have to forcefully push it with your shoulder or something, as you guys will see later. So then I heard footsteps down the hallway, and I kind of was typing in the computer, opening the point of sale, and I said, "I'm back here, Mel," really loud so she'd hear me. And I just continued what I was doing, but there was no Melanie. So I paused, and I heard footsteps go back, and the door open again and close again. And then I thought, that silly woman, she left something in the car. So I continued to do what I was doing. I finished opening the register, and there was still no Melanie. So I decided to walk down the hall, and I opened the curtain to see. It was pouring rain. I thought, has she fallen? Does she need help? But the car wasn't there. Melanie wasn't there. So I just kind of stood there for a minute in the dark, and then I ran up to the front where the light was, and I just stood there and waited for Melanie to get here. But then I kind of thought, what's going on? Because I'm not one to say I don't believe in that stuff, but that was very real enough for me to call out and tell her where I was.
I think it has a lot to do with the items, not necessarily the house. I don't really get it like a haunted vibe from the house, although, you know, maybe the owner might have, the previous owner, you know, before it was a flower shop, might have an attachment to it. Not necessarily a creepy attachment, just an attachment that was my home. And, you know, the things, like they hear things falling and whatnot, you know, that might be the previous owner not particularly liking that one thing, you know, or and that's cool. You know, they give us signs like that. You know, I don't really want that there. Maybe they enjoy other things. They tend to let us know those type of things.
I had another employee too call me at the other shop one day, and she said, "There's something in here messing with me." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, I keep hearing things falling off the walls, and I go back there and there's nothing." And she said, and then she would be sitting there working, and she'd hear a noise, and she'd think, "Do I have a customer in here?" So she'd go look. But so it's what I mean. I just want to know what's going on. At first, I laughed it off like old house noises.
Yeah.
To the girls, but until I experienced it.
With the current owners knowing little about the property's history, NT Paranormal dug into the city records and newspaper archives to piece together the forgotten past of the building.
So one of my favorite things about paranormal investigation is where I get to do research into an area or a property. Just like the regular investigation, we have to do a lot of digging, a lot of fact-checking. I get the opportunity to uncover the facts about what a place has been through, who's lived there, and experience the past in a whole new way. I really like the cases where the current owners don't have a whole lot of information available, because even though it's more of a challenge, you never know what you're going to find. The history could be something tragic, could be boring, or you could find that a place has a completely forgotten historical significance.
NT Paranormal is no stranger to the town of Granbury, Texas. After several investigations in the area, NTPI has become very familiar with its history, the families who call it home, and its well-documented track record for paranormal activity. After being founded in 1887, the town named for Confederate General Hiram B. Granbury started as a square and a log cabin courthouse. Many historic buildings on the square, including the Granbury Opera House, the Nut House Hotel, and the old Granbury Jail, are believed to be some of the most haunted locations in Texas. In the 20s, many roads in Granbury were not yet paved, and the town wasn't anywhere near the size that it is now. The Needful Things antique store can be found today at 123 South Morgan Street, but in those days, before the population boom, the property was billed as 13 Bridge Street. The house, originally built by Frank Morrison for his grandson Irvin Morrison in 1929, was originally a two-bedroom farmhouse overlooking one of the many cotton crops used to supply his business. Frank Morrison was well known for being the owner of the Granbury Gin Company, which was a prominent business for Granbury in the 20s. Later, another room would be added after a fire that started in the garage that destroyed Frank Morrison's prize Plymouth and caused enough damage to the house that the back side of it would have to be rebuilt. It would be between 1940 and 1954 that Irvin and his wife would become separated, but would continue to live at the house, working as a painter, farmer, and general contractor in Granbury. After Frank's passing in 1956, Irvin would remarry and eventually move away from the house in 1960. The property would sit vacant for several years at a time to be rented out for short stints, seeing roughly 2 new families a year until finally an owner decided to live in it themselves. Barney and Gloria Barrow made the little house on Morgan Street their home for 10 years. After enduring the loss of a daughter and a grandchild, Barney Barrow would also pass away in 1995. Gloria, who moved away, sold the house, at which point it would become commercial property. Since 1995, the property has been a resale shop, multiple antique stores, a flower shop, and a pharmacy. Most notably in 2006, it was a child advocacy center for children who were the victims of abuse. Roy Kelly, a local home builder, volunteered his services to update the facility free of charge. Children who were the victims of abuse in Hood County were taken here to be temporarily housed, interviewed, and cared for while the state figured out how best to place them into foster care. Needful Things Antique Store has seen its share of rich history, death, and emotional trauma. Could this be the reason behind the activity reported here? One witness thinks it could be something else. Could the activity at Needful Things be attributed to the energy contained within the objects themselves? Can a spirit stay attached to an object just as easily as a location? We stayed in the store overnight to find out for ourselves if Needful Things would live up to its namesake.
I guess the most memorable thing about this investigation was when y'all completely abandoned me in the antique store for, 7 hours. I guess it was only about 20 minutes. But normally on an investigation, it takes hours for anything to happen. Like, we're there forever and we're bored to death. But it was probably as soon as y'all left the driveway that noises started. And it was a lot, just all at once. So at one point during this investigation, I called you and Dad because I had convinced myself that one of y'all had stayed back to scare me. There was 15 minutes of footsteps up and down the hall and me hearing voices. And so I called Dad's phone first, and I hear the phone ring. And I think, oh, whew, yeah, he's here. They're just messing with me. But no one, when he didn't stick his head around the corner and tell me, the jig's up, I decided to call your phone. And I could clearly hear both of y'all in your car. So I knew it wasn't one of y'all that had stuck around. And I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't go check out what was going on, but it was between me and the only exit. The front door was dead bolted and we didn't have the key. So the only way in and out was that back door. So you can see in the footage, I kind of start looking at that window next to me and trying to see if I can go out of it without having to bust it with an antique, because if that noise had gotten too much closer, that was the plan. Bust the window with an antique and crawl out.
Where do you hear walking back and forth?
In the back of the house, but the motion light hasn't come on, and I ain't walking out of this room. It sounded like it was coming down the hall.
I didn't know it while we were filming this, obviously, that I was sitting in a room full of high EMFs, basically causing a fear cage, and I tend to be a little sensitive to those. I get nauseous, I get a headache, I get paranoid, and the other thing that was going on was that I was getting EVPs. I'm glad I didn't know that, because that probably would have pushed me over the edge and I probably would have busted that window with a antique and crawled out. Y'all would have come back to find me just in the yard, holding my knees and rocking back and forth.
We have a really good handle on what is and what isn't contamination at the time. There was a lot of banging around in the house that I was able to show was the air conditioning. I was able to go back and when we would hear the bumps and the groans and the sounds in the recording, I was able to look at the video and see like the video is shaking or the door right in front of the air handler was moving. Those were pretty easy to debunk. And the sounds that were contamination from out. One thing about the contamination was that when there were voices outside or there was a car outside or a sound from outside happening, you could hear it on every recorder at the same time. But we differentiated EVPs from that because it would only show up on one or two recording devices at a time. And I think it's really interesting that on a lot of those recordings, we can trace it from recorder to recorder going through the house. And so we can almost kind of trace the steps of something moving around, making noises and talking.
Anything. There were some sounds, I think, that we debunked. There are some reflections. There's a lot of glass, a lot of mirrors. One of the parts that puzzles me are the electromagnetic readings you were getting in the front room that were very, very high levels that you would think was indicative of some kind of electrical wiring, which we found out actually comes in the back of the house, not that room. And in fact, this room, you got no readings at all. But these same magnetic anomalies were there, and then they disappeared.
So absolutely everything is zero for any kind of EMF activity for the whole place, except for in this front room. So I'm guessing all the electrical comes in this way, but it's definitely making a fear cage sort of effect in here. While the EMF interference and spikes that we got in the front room were really interesting, and I don't have an explanation for them, we used several EMF detectors to kind of verify it, and we never got it to happen again. There's always the possibility that first EMF detector that I used was at fault and could have been producing incorrect results. However, I've used that EMF detector again since then, check the calibration on it, and I found no faults in the hardware or software on it. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't something going wrong with it at that particular point in time. And that's one of the reasons we actually use multiple of the same device to kind of verify what's going on.
You would like to do more with the voice recordings. Very difficult with the street out here. That's the location makes contamination. However, just from what I've heard, you can tell usually when it's the contamination coming in. The things that we heard weren't.
Is there anything here that would like to communicate with us? Besides traffic. Dad? Did you hear something?
I don't like the door being behind.
Is there anything here that would like to communicate with us? Besides traffic. Dad? Did you hear something?
I don't like the door
Is there
being
anything here that would like to communicate with us? Besides traffic. Dad? Did you hear something?
I don't like the door being behind.
Dad? At one point during the night, we had a guy repeatedly ask us to say nursery rhymes because he thought that there were maybe some children in there, like, baby ghosts. So we called up a friend and had her daughter do some nursery rhymes over the phone. And immediately after that, we heard footsteps go up the hallway.
Like a whistling?
No, just a
That wasn't you?
No.
You there? Hey, Savannah, you there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna start a recorder here in a second, and I want you to try singing a nursery rhyme for us, okay? Okay, we got the recorder going, so if there's anybody here that wants to play or sing along, I've got Savannah here on the phone with me, and she wants to sing a nursery rhyme, and she wants you to sing along with her. Go ahead, Savannah.
Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up on you because we just heard a bump. Was that you?
Mm-mm. And I keep hearing something in the hall.
Like, as soon as she started doing that, I heard like a thump over there. I'm gonna step out in the hall if you wanna come up and touch me or something. You have my permission.
Sunny says to check the bathroom.
Okay, look, I just looked in the bathroom and I didn't like it, so we're just gonna calm down on that, alright? Now, I know there's a stupid mannequin there just waiting to come to life. count on that. Now I know there's a stupid mannequin there just waiting to come to life. Now I know there's a stupid mannequin there just wait. Now I know there's a stupid mannequin there just wait. Another interesting experience that I had would have been capturing the EVP on the parabolic microphone. That one was extremely exciting to me because we got to hear one of those whispers, one of those voices in real time, rather than me just hearing it later on a recorder. Huh? Who's at the end of the hall that's staring back at me? Huh? Who's at the end of the hall that's staring back at me?
There's so many EVPs, it's hard to pick out like which one's the best or most convincing. That one's really good, the one where you're in the hallway, and I liked that we're hearing more in real time and responding to them, because you can see me respond to stuff that I'm hearing, and then you can hear it back.
The big dresser here that I believe now I've been told was handmade, a violent wobbling back and forth of this dresser with a motion detection light that was located on it. Once again, immediately behind me is when this happened, not where my attention is focused. I was walking. I'm aware that it's an old house. It's a pier and beam foundation, so the floor does have some movement to it. It just seemed very violent for the amount of movement that I was doing. Enough that for the first time on these investigations, I was very startled.
Were you out there?
I'm hearing. Oh my gosh.
But I hadn't moved when it started doing that. I was standing still.
Yeah, I got goosebumps.
I was standing still.
What did you? What
I was standing still. Neither one of us were moving.
I'm too old for this.
Neither one of us were moving.
Moving what? What happened?
It's doing it again.
We were standing here, and it started shaking. Enough that the light started waving.
Was it doing it
Now
again?
you hit there. No, not like it was before.
I was moving in the hall though.
Go move back in the hall. Like go everywhere.
Plant your feet.
We won't move.
I'm hearing. Oh my gosh.
But I hadn't moved when it started doing that. I was standing still.
Yeah, I got goosebumps.
I was standing still.
What did you? What happened?
I was standing still. Neither one of us were moving. Neither one of us.
So there's a lot more that goes into our evidence analysis than what people realize. It's not just looking at footage, it's not just listening to the audio. It's actually going in and analyzing what all this data is telling us. One of the big things we do is spectrum analysis in the audio that we capture. So when we get an EVP, it's not just that we hear a voice where there shouldn't be a voice. We're cross-referencing it with the video to make sure it's not somebody in the room talking or that it's some kind of outside contamination. We also look at what frequency that the unexpected voice or the EVP falls in on the spectrum of sound, which yields some really interesting results because, like, as you can see here, I'm looking at this bit of audio that's in a normal spectrum of hearing. You know, this is us talking, this is all our voice. And this graph here, what it's showing is the decibels up and down, and it's showing the frequency that it's in. Well, the human ear can pick up anything between 20 hertz and 20,000 kilohertz. Okay, so there's a very broad range of things that you can hear. Well, the human voice can only produce sounds of speech between 80 hertz and up. A lot of the EVPs that we have found on past investigations have been below 80 hertz, but still have the characteristics of human speech. So those are the ones that we're really looking for, that we find interesting. That's one of the things that we do to try to debunk matchup sounds and figure out what could possibly be causing these EVPs. But the really interesting ones fall below what human vocal cords can make and still have the characteristics of human speech. Because if human vocal cords can't make it, but it's still human speech, you tell me what that is.
A few weeks later, we met with Sunny and her staff to go over the evidence. This is what they had to say about what NT Paranormal found.
Huh?
So that's my toy monster.
So you can hear how loud
Yeah,
I am.
clear. Yeah.
Who's at the end of the hall that's staring back at me?
No.
Oh, I got the chills!
What did that say? Was it Sarah again?
Yes.
It's the
Very
same audio
clearly.
from it. Okay, so we
heard
got
it.
that one,
Yeah.
and then we got something else here in a second. And she reacted to it.
Yeah.
She actually heard it.
What was that? Yeah, what was
know.
that? I don't know.
So the one thing we thought that might be was those little turbines you have outside
Yeah.
spinning around, because it kind of sounds like
Was
that.
it?
No, I went.
They don't move.
That's what I went out there to check. They don't move at
Okay.
all. So I'm back to not knowing what this was.
Yeah.
Like somebody's.
And that's not old house noise. At first I thought it was old house noise, but it's not old house noise.
I'm not gonna rule it out. I'm
But
not gonna tell you it's good.
What is that?
But it doesn't sound like it.
No!
I'm letting you make up your own mind
Yeah.
about it. But I couldn't reproduce the
Well,
noise.
I mean, okay, so when you're here by yourself and you hear this, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm being silly, but to hear it being caught like that.
I've experienced things in this room that I can't tell you what it was. I know I experienced it. It was an experience that happened to me.
I don't know if there's anything paranormal there. I think there are things we can't explain and couldn't debunk. I'd definitely like to go back, but I'm, as usual, completely unwilling to say that, yes, it's haunted.
Well, I'd never say that a place is haunted because there's just really no way of knowing. I would definitely say that this place could have something more to it than what's on the surface. There's just a staggering amount of evidence that we got that we really weren't able to debunk. We weren't able to bring it to a conclusion. So I think if any place was having legitimate paranormal activity, it could be happening here. But, you know, until we actually understand what paranormal supernatural activity is, there's no way you could confirm it. I got more EVPs here in one night than I've got at other locations in one night.
I'm shocked because when I told the girls, I was just like, whatever. You know, I didn't believe it.
How do you feel about it now?